This is Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. An informal chats with top business moguls as they share their stories of failure and success in a fun and relaxed way. Get entertained, educated, and unlock the secrets to success.
Welcome to Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman. I'm back with my dear friend Tony Brock.
Ronnie, thanks. Glad to be back.
It's good to have you here again. I was just looking at one of my notes. So you're the spy turned executive coach.
Yeah, that's what the tagline says. Right. I hate that, and I think I had held off from that acknowledgement for a long time because certainly in the special operations community, in the intelligence community, it's all about being the quiet professional.
Right.
And since retiring and going into corporate world, that's the stuff everybody always wants to hear about.
Yeah.
And so you have to acknowledge at least enough to be both interesting and interested in others.
It makes for a good movie and TV. Like the rest of us want to know that spy turned executive. There's something there.
You know what's in there? I'd say that having an understanding of people and human nature, and then how organizations function and sometimes are dysfunctional, that's the part I got from being an intelligence officer, because it really is all about people. And then when you get into the targeting, you're looking at strengths and weaknesses of organizations, whether that's an individual or an army or a political system.
Absolutely.
So I guess there are those commonalities. Yeah.
So Tony, it's wonderful to have you back because I had so many more questions to ask and so much more that I wanted to learn, and I think our listener would want to learn as well. But tell me about the National Medal of Honor. This is a really unique museum institute that you're working on, operation, the facility. I've seen it being developed in Texas. Beautiful, incredible. I've seen some of the renderings, but there's a lot more to just this physical building. So tell the listener, what is the National Medal of Honor and what is the Medal of Honor itself?
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. The Medal of Honor is our nation's highest award. It was originally enacted by President Lincoln, 1861. Wow. And at that time, it was our only award. From the Revolutionary War until the Civil War, we didn't have any awards or anything to bestow on our revolutionary soldiers. They specifically were making that distinction and break from the British that we didn't have that type of thing. So during the Civil War, Lincoln felt that he needed a mechanism to recognize Union soldiers and called for Congress to create the Medal of Honor. And so it's our nation's highest award, and it's given specifically for conspicuous gallantry and valor in combat operations. Incredible. And so of the 40 million military servicemen we've had in our history, fewer than 4,000. I think right now it's 3,516.
So this is a really special group.
The Medal of Honor. Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah. And only 60 of those Medal of Honor recipients are currently alive. And so it's
how many?
60.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a really precious national resource that we have.
Very, very prestigious. So for our audience, I didn't do this and I usually do, but I want to go back to that in a moment. But you're a retired Navy commander. You're a business owner. You are a leadership coach with just an incredible experience in providing leadership to our companies, in addition to being the executive director at the National Medal of Honor, Griffin Institute. Yeah. What's the purpose of the museum? Why is it being built? Why are we spending the resources needed to help people understand what this is? I presume there's just a valuable reason why this is important to us as a nation.
Yeah, I love that question. A lot of people think that we're moving it.
Okay.
That we already had one. And they're surprised to learn that we don't have a National Medal of Honor museum already to capture the stories of these heroes. And so the reality is that we haven't. And it's our only national monument, national museum currently under construction. It'll open March 25th, 2025 in Arlington, Texas, right in the Dallas-Fort Worth Entertainment District Metroplex area. Easy airport for people from East and West Coast to get to, so come on down after March. To do that. And the project really consists of three parts. There's a monument that'll be in Washington, D.C., in and around the Lincoln Memorial, since it's an extension of Lincoln's legacy. Nice. There'll be the museum here in Texas, which is 100,000 square feet. It's an acre of museum space, really modern, really high-tech, digital. There's some AI pieces in there. And it's just both an architectural marvel and really brilliant storytelling because the museum's purpose is, in general, to inspire America. And we're going to do that through the Medal of Honor recipient stories.
Right.
And so it's a biographical museum. It's not a military museum. It's not a history museum, although both of those things exist as a backdrop. It's really about these incredible human beings who will tell you, I'm a regular guy, regular guy, regular gal, and I had an exquisitely bad day, and I made the right choice.
Right.
And I haven't always made the right choice prior to my action, and maybe I haven't always made it since. But they'll tell you it was certainly easier to earn the medal than it is to wear it.
Wow.
And now they serve as that role model at that standard, and carry that for the rest of their lives. So the museum will serve as that vault for the stories, and then specifically the values inherent in the medal.
Wow.
And so it really kind of goes deeper to those human values, again, that aren't only military. They are human values that we've been wrestling with, courage, integrity, sacrifice, commitment.
Right.
What's it mean to be a good citizen? What does it mean to be patriotic? Right. And yet still participate in debate and bring together different ideas. What's that all about?
Right.
That's something we've been wrestling with for 20,000 years. So it's if the museum serves as the vault for those stories, then the Griffin Leadership Institute serves as a vehicle to get those stories out. And we do that through adult programming for corporate, both we'll call home games and away games.
Right.
Folks can come to us, or we go out to their companies to put on the show, and also with children's programming to bring those values back into schools.
That's an interesting point, Tony. Why is it important for people to learn those stories? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking of this for this reason. And around 2013-ish, I was living in Southern California. And I came to Dallas, Texas area for a board meeting with an organization that was made up of a number of prior service members, career service members, academy graduates. And I attended a dinner event where the keynote speaker was a Medal of Honor winner. Now, I didn't know that the museum would ultimately end up here.
Right.
But I sat there and I'm reading the story of this Medal of Honor winner, and incredible. The sacrifice made that led to him achieving this. And it's not like it's something that, and you were the military. It's not like something when you join the military, this is the award that I want to achieve. It doesn't quite work that way.
No, you don't aspire.
You don't.
You don't aspire, yeah.
And so,
second only maybe to the Purple Heart. Like nobody wants to get the Purple Heart. Nobody wants to get shot.
Exactly.
But you're trying to achieve a mission and trying to work with your brothers and sisters who are on your right and left and get the job done and all get home alive.
But I was so moved by that story, just as an American, as a person. And so I suspect that. And so I asked the question, like, why is it important for people like me and others who may not have served in the military to know this history?
Right. Yeah, I think the important aspect is that at the end of the day, these are human values to which we all aspire. Right. And the Medal of Honor recipients serve as a real-life example that it's possible and that this extraordinary capability exists in all of us. Right. General Brady will say that, who's a Medal of Honor recipient, helicopter pilot from Vietnam, he'll say that, fear is an emotion and courage is a choice.
Right. It's true.
And so we hear these stories, and what's important about them is that we can learn from the story of these individuals. We call it a double bridge. Let's talk about the recipient. Let's talk about some of the values inherent in this particular action, and then let's bring it over to our lives.
Right.
And I'm never going to be a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, but I can be, a leader in my corporation, which can generate a profit and then give back to my community. I can lead my community. I can lead my church. I can do some work for a nonprofit. All of us have this endless capability and potential to do extraordinary things by working together. And so I think, why learn these stories? Why, back to, I guess it'd be a rip-off Kennedy's moonshot speech of, why cross the Atlantic, why climb a mountain, why go to the moon? Because we have the capability to do extraordinary things. Right. And the Medal of Honor recipient stories are sort of a map or a framework to be like, oh, that's possible. Okay. The children's programming is phenomenal because kids get to see themselves in those stories and think, hey, maybe I could do that too. Right. And they're not cluttered with all the other misgivings that adults sometimes have to think, oh, of course I can't. And they just believe.
I interviewed another friend of mine recently who is an Air Force Academy graduate. And I asked him why he went to the Air Force Academy. And he said that when he was really young, growing up in the middle of the country, that he heard the speeches about going to space and he wanted to be an astronaut. He was a really young man, and he set that as his sight. So I think you're right. It inspires people to try to reach a level that they may not have otherwise thought was possible.
100%. Yeah. And within the Griffin Institute, that's our motto and theme. If it's the overall mission is to inspire America. Yeah. And within the Griffin Institute, it's to inspire, equip, and connect people around these values that are in the Medal of Honor.
Right.
And the inspiration's easy because the Medal of Honor recipient stories are inspirational.
They are.
Equipping them with some leadership tools, got it. And the last big part is connecting them with each other. There are people who are interested to learn more and grow in that area, and when you connect them with each other, we can all get a lot further when we do it together.
It is. I have a friend of mine. I don't think I've mentioned this on the program. A guy named Steve, good friend of mine. He's a West Point graduate, flew helicopters in the military, and he was flying a helicopter one day, and I think I may have mentioned this story to you, and he clipped a mountain, helicopter crashes, slides down a mountain.
Wow.
And it lands, and he's thinking, all right, am I alive or not? And he sees the sky and like, okay, I made it, and he walks away. I have him tell the story all the time, and he looks at it like, all right, I'm just doing my job. I'm serving a mission. He doesn't think it's anything special. But for me, having him tell that story, especially in the business community, is so critical. One, because I had an employee one time tell me, he was a manager of an IT department. And he came into my office one day and he said, Ronnie, I need everyone to do exactly what I say. I need them to move on this right now. It's life or death. And I said, well, one, it's not life or death. we're talking about a software that you prefer people implement a certain way.
Right.
But people like Steve know that's life or death. This guy walked from a helicopter that crashed. But I look at the Medal of Honor people, and I think it gives such perspective, such life perspective that sometimes we need.
I think we do. We need to keep ourselves in check a little bit. You know, it's not only the military. You have police, firefighters, first responders, or doctors and nurses working in ERs. There's a lot of folks working in the life or death space.
Right.
And it balances it, right? It serves as an inspiration so that we can take the best of that and bring it in our own lives, and it keeps us in check to say, hey, you know what? The fact that there was a little bit of traffic this morning, or we're not going to make that deadline exactly, or we might have gained or lost some money on this thing, we're going to be okay.
Right.
And I think that, back to your point on grit and perseverance, that helps encourage us to sort of plow through, not get bogged down in the negative stuff.
It's amazing. So, Tony, walk me back through. Let's go back in time now. I think I skipped over some of this in our last program. So you joined the military at 18. You found that you loved being in a submarine, and you built a career out of it.
Yeah.
What was next for you? You served on the submarine. How did you evolve in your career in the military? How long did you serve, by the way? It's
28 years.
28?
Yeah. Right.
Wow.
28 years.
Amazing.
Yeah. The first 8 to 10 of that was enlisted. Then I went back to university. The submarine was a great experience. Super high tech. I think kind of every kid's dream. To be 18 years old and be riding around on a submarine. That was a lot of fun.
Now you remember the Sean Connery movie?
Yeah, that's right. That was all going on at the time, right? Hunt for Red October and all that kind of stuff. It was, it was an incredible example of leadership. We had corporate and others who would come on as riders sometimes to go out and do a couple days for the Navy to be able to talk about here's how we lead and manage within this operational environment. How do you achieve the mission? How do you incorporate backup systems? How do you have leading, training and education for your crew?
That is an incredible idea. I didn't realize they brought the private sector leaders on the ship, on the submarine, directly to learn.
That'll be a task for Navy Public Affairs, so folks don't contact me on how they do that. But I know we did at the time, and that's incredibly valuable. So I saw examples of leadership at its best in that environment, and it encouraged me to step up my own game and go back to university. Certainly a big catalyst with that was a boost of self-confidence from my wife. The combination of those two things of seeing leadership done so well and her support really spurred me into all right, life's short. Let's get after it.
Wow. Well, 28 years is an impressive period of time to serve in the military.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it was a privilege to serve. I was coming up pre 9/11. I had done a tour at SEAL Team already. And I think I was going to have one more to go at Special Operations Command, and was working on my MBA when 9/11 hit. And so then, there wasn't going to be an option to get out. So I stayed in past 20 and went on to Iraq and Afghanistan.
Okay, amazing. Where in across the world? So you've traveled across the world. I think you lived in Hong Kong for a while. tell us about some of that journey. And this is probably less for the business leader listening to the group, but maybe for someone looking at a long-term career in the military. You've had such an exposure. Yeah. The kids grew up around the world, your kids. It helped to give them a life that maybe you wouldn't have imagined otherwise, and a level of experience, and they're all doing well. But what is it like living around the world and experiencing different cultures and environments?
Yeah, it was a blast. I mean, we joked to call it jet set middle class. You know, it was a great way to expose our kids to geopolitics and foreign language and religion and all those things. You'd have to ask them if they loved it, but I think they'd all say yes. I think but the corporate reflection of that is, you know, kind of keeping an open mind and kind of going where the river sort of might take you. Right. You know, even in Michael Watkins' book, First 90 Days, we talked about that most executives during their career will have 17, 20 transitions, significant transitions. So if you have the opportunity where you're working as a chief operating officer of a department, and you have an opportunity to either change departments or change locations globally, so many organizations are global now, I'd say lean into it, do it. Because there's such a wealth of experience that's going to come out of just throwing yourself into the unknown, and either doing the same job in a different geographic location or changing functions and all of that at the same time. It really sets a stage for a lot of growth.
You know, that is an interesting concept, because I don't hear a lot of people speak about what you mentioned, and here's what I'm discussing there. I've said this to people as well, but when I was really young, I had a chance to spend some time with the CEO of one of the largest shipbuilders in the country. And he mentioned to me that graduated in engineering. He joined the shipyard right out of college. And then someone found in him this unique talent, and they helped him grow as a leader. And so he became the head of engineering, which was his area of expertise. And then he became the head of marketing. And then he became the head of HR. And then he became the head of another department. And I had an interview with a good friend of mine who's the CEO of an airline as well. And he said something similar. But this guy's point was, it helped me to prepare to be the CEO one day. But it took me out of my comfort zone as well. Oh, 100%. But I got to know the business, and I got to know how it operates across the board. So when I did become CEO, my leader of HR couldn't tell me that you don't really understand and just follow what I'm telling you. He could actually ask good questions so that as the CEO, he can make the right decision.
Yeah. And I think that applies in the military and it applies across industry. You know, certainly in my career, my value add at the SEAL team wasn't in having any of the attributes of a Navy SEAL, because I wasn't one. Although, you know, grit, determination, taking pride in your work, things like that were part of the team ethos that we all got dipped in and, you know, and ultimately aspired to. But it was really about bringing a tactical and technical proficiency in my functional discipline. And a lot of that I got elsewhere. It was working in ships and submarines and other parts of the Navy, and you know, satellite comm systems and all those things, bringing that technology to the SEAL team. And so I think I wouldn't have gotten that if I hadn't have moved around. You know, so serving later in Afghanistan, and then you talked about did an attaché tour in China as a naval attaché, in large part just to do something completely different. You know, we also wanted the diversity of experience, et cetera. And so that put me you know, right in Hong Kong at the mouth of manufacturing and distribution from China, where you had finance and law and manufacturing and all these other industries, which for me was a brand new experience. And it's intimidating, and there's a huge steep learning curve. But you know, that's one of the signs you're growing. Is that you're uncomfortable, and so you got to lean into the uncomfortable.
And that's so true. It sounds like that's a big part of your leadership training and development now with these companies, is how do you put yourself in a slightly uncomfortable position so you can continue to stretch your capabilities. I think, you know, so for a lot of companies, and this would be really good and a good transition for us, for businesses and managers and leaders listening, is if you become stagnant, your business might not make it, And I think that stagnation is what causes companies to kind of lose focus. We think of the old Kodak that we used to know and some of these other companies that just didn't transition. Or Blockbuster Video.
The classic case study of them having access to digital film and, you know, the choices they made, et cetera. Yeah, I think you're 100% spot on, because we talk about self, team, and mission. When we talk about alignment, how can we get aligned towards our values? Whether those are your personal values as a human for self, what are the things, your professional values as a leader and team leader, and then organizationally, how do we scale that?
Right.
And when I talk to executive leaders, we kind of go through those big five: vision, mission, business intelligence, strategy, and plans.
Nice.
And the one piece in there, your vision is probably going to stay fairly consistent. That's your North Star. This is like the future dream for the company. Your mission is going to change based on the customer's needs and pain points, and maybe the services and products that you can create.
Right.
But the absolute given is that the market is going to change.
Right.
And so the business intelligence landscape, the operational landscape in which you operate, is shifting daily. So how can you stay fixed in, this is the way we've always done it, it's worked before, why change? Because the universe is changing around you.
Exactly.
And if you don't remain cognizant of that and continually check in on your planning assumptions and adapt your strategy and plans, you're going to get smoked. Yeah.
So
in special operations term, they'd say get off the X. You got to move. You got to move. Move, shoot, communicate. You got to get off the X.
And I think you may have mentioned AI at one point through our conversation. And I think that's where many businesses might be struggling today, because they don't recognize or understand, where is AI going to take us? How do we respond? How do we incorporate it? Do we incorporate it? It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think I think the answer in there lies that you must incorporate it, and yet it's not going to be the silver bullet to save all things.
Right.
And so, and I'm not trying to talk out both sides to cover it. But honestly, if you look at every other time when we've had these major technological advances and transformational changes, you don't have the luxury of not learning more about it and seeing how it might impact your organization. If you went back and looked at telecommunications and said, well, we're just not going to do this internet thing.
Right.
We don't think it applies to us.
Right.
Okay, how's that working for you?
Totally.
It may not save you, but it also isn't something you can avoid.
So after 28 years in the military, how did you select leadership coaching as that transition? Like, what took you to that arena? You've had all this wonderful experience, so you had great experience, but what took you in that direction versus any other direction that you could have gone?
Yeah, I think that, I said before, like around 9/11, I was working on my MBA, and within that full spectrum of business, education and experience, the thing that resonated most clearly for me from my time was the organizational management and leadership of the organization. Finance is important, operations are, all those things are important. But the value differentiator, the things that I've seen just help a high performance team soar and an organization soar, or crash and burn, is leadership. Right. And when it's done right, again, I had the tremendous privilege of working for both General McChrystal and Admiral McRaven during my tours. I got to see what right looks like, and it's amazing. And we've all worked for toxic leaders who just create a psychologically unsafe work environment, and then you can't get 100% from 100% of your people. And so I just became really fascinated with what's that all about? Right. Without getting too touchy-feely and emotional about it, it has a place within a very qualitative, quantitative business discussion. Right. It's part of the framework because your organization is made up of people. So I just really became interested in that as a value differentiator for businesses and for productivity and for success. And so went to Georgetown University for executive leadership coaching, and kind of then got some formal training on how do you serve as an executive coach for someone at that level. How do you have a closed door conversation and really let them not only have a sounding board, but also be able to really unpack what are their perceptions, how is it that they're making decisions based on what criteria and what assumptions are in there.
It's interesting.
It gives us that opportunity.
Now, I think at one point early in my career, the one of the conversations and discussions that I had is, does a single person, especially in a large organization, make a difference? And can a CEO really ruin an organization? And I think what I've uncovered in my career is the answer is yes. That because they're setting policy across this business, they can drive it one way or another by a simple decision. So I presume you've seen the same. So
sure.
you mentioned General McChrystal and some of the others.
Right.
A leader can really make a monumental difference.
Right.
And having the right leader is important.
Yeah, and it's been said and documented a few times, and Simon Sinek and others have captured at SEAL Team. There's really two criteria. They're looking at your technical and tactical performance in doing the job, and your ability to get along well with others.
Right.
Because it does take a team. And we would invariably select someone who, and all of them, this is on a scale, right? Because all of them were just like rock stars. But we would take someone that you might call a B+ player within that environment who could work well and get along well with others over someone who's an A+, but they're toxic.
Sure.
Because it's just literally, a cancer within the organization.
Right.
And seeing someone who can lead into collaboration, there's a classic story of General McChrystal when we were working forward in Afghanistan and getting everyone to share information and share intelligence within the task force was so critically important. And he took the bold first step of going first. Okay. And said, okay, walk me through how this process works and how does it get classified. And was actually, sir, you classify it for everything that we collect and produce. We classify it. So I can make it top secret, keep it controlled, but I can open it to everyone in the task force. Okay. Yes, sir.
Interesting.
Okay, do that. So, a big part of the intelligence cycle in that sense was share first.
Sure.
And I think that's something that corporate leaders can take away as well. When you're making critical decisions, talk out loud within your executive team so they understand how and why you're making the decisions you're making.
Right.
It's not only gives them insight into your thought process, you're grooming and growing your other fellow executives, your subordinates in that track. And when you make a decision, then share that information so the whole organization can move at the speed of real business.
That's an interesting premise. Yeah. The idea of using your decision making, open up your decision making so that people can learn from it. Because I think so many others are worried about either being criticized or undermined even in their decisions, so they might not expose a lot of what they're thinking.
Yeah, there's some factors of imposter syndrome. We're worried about that being a sign of weakness somehow, and it doesn't have to be. Right. It's absolutely a tool to help groom and grow your folks. It's also one of the primary benefits that people have of being part of a successful organization. Sure. That you get to work alongside such incredible visionary leaders. Right. Well, talk to me. Right. Give me some insights on how is it that you're doing what you're doing, and that counts as a whole separate master's degree in business and just being able to be there. So, and I think along those same lines, I would offer to executive leaders that you can have boundaries on that. We would often, you'll catch folks in the military, we would do it where someone would say, well, I think I would vote. And we're like, well, let me interrupt for a second. Everybody here has a voice. You don't have a vote. Right. You're valued as human beings and you're valued as professionals. That's why you're at the table. We're really interested in your ideas, even if you disagree with the boss or even if you disagree with the conventional wisdom. But we're all going to put that out on the table, and then the leader's going to make a decision. Right. We're not running this by consensus. We say we're here to support democracy, not practice it.
Now, Tony, if you can indulge me for a moment, on the business side, without mentioning names of organizations, what's been one of your most complicated organizations? Whether they're trying to fundamentally change and shift either businesses or they're trying to shift executives. I've been in confidential searches for CEOs with an existing CEO in there. But what's been probably one of the most complicated that you think one of our listeners would want to understand?
Yeah, I think consistently what I see across the board is that executive leaders will often say in hindsight, I knew the right answer, I just didn't take it soon enough. Interesting. Or I didn't make hard enough of a rudder call. In the Navy, we'll say, make a 60-degree turn. Right. You don't make a 3-degree turn. Right. And they'll say, I knew in my gut what the right answer was. I should have moved more assertively, and I should have done it sooner. And sometimes it's we get locked into that decision-making loop where we have an expectation that I'm going to get 90-95% of the information I need to make a decision. Sure. And you just need to have that expectation. You never will. And so, you get to 70-75%. That's probably as good as it's going to get. Right. As a former intelligence officer within special operations, we would kind of lay out that criteria. Here's what I know. Here's what I don't know. Here's what I think. Here's the remaining information. Right. And here's the probability that I'm going to get it and by when. Right. And so if that remaining 15% is not going to arrive by 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, and you do need to make a decision based on market conditions, make the call, and just move out. So I think expectation management's one, and then the second is this. I don't know if I'd pitch it under imposter syndrome as much as a human desire to love and be loved. We want the people of the organization to enjoy their work and enjoy us and see us as an inspirational leader. When you do that at scale, you're just not going to make everyone happy. And so you got to know that there's going to be a couple of people that you otherwise respect their opinion, but we disagree on this issue, and you're not going to be happy with me. And if I just don't make the call and I kind of mull around, the longer it goes, it's interesting. It just becomes difficult.
How do you coach up? I know we're at the end of this program, Tony. These keep going too fast. How do you coach an executive out of the fear of making that decision? Like that is such an internal thing. Like there's smart people that could, but they've got a little reservation for whatever reason. How do you coach them out of that?
Yeah, I think for coaching, an important aspect is that we try to stay away from why questions. Fully support Simon Sinek. Start with why. But then once we get into coaching, why tends to carry a lot of blame and shame and guilt. There's an implication that you're wrong. Why do you think that way? Instead, maybe what about this is important to you? What about this decision is important to you? What stands to be most impactful for the organization? So bring it back up to that 100,000 foot level. And how does this relate to your vision for the organization, where we're going to be in 25 years? How does this relate to your mission? How does this relate to the market and what we're seeing going on? How is this aligned with your strategy or not? When you start framing it against those things, then it sort of becomes self-evident about what about this isn't so important to them versus I want to be liked or I want to be respected or I don't want them to realize that I'm uncertain or whatever the humanity is that's in there. There's a difference between the two. And it sort of becomes self-evident. A lot of times, executives will say, now that I hear myself say it out loud, I know what the right call is. That's cool. Okay, so I'm hearing some self-assigned homework. How are you going to execute that and by when? And then we'll put an actual tangible to do on it because that's, the old adage, and I think we had in that event when you and I were together, 3 frogs sitting on a log and one decides to jump. How many are left? Still 3. Because deciding to do it and actually doing it are still 2 different things. And so the last piece of the coaching will be, what do you intend to do about it and by when? And they can reach out to their group, phone a friend. Do you, it's the same as you want to be a millionaire. You can, who else on your team can help you accomplish this task? You don't have to lead in isolation.
Tony, this has been incredible. It's so good to have you back again. Your ideas and insight is absolutely refreshing.
Thank you, Ronnie.
And I hope inspirational to those that are listening. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having this type of program where folks can unlock some business secrets.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman.
Thank you for listening to Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. Please be sure to subscribe and share and stay tuned for more incredible Business Decoded episodes.